Okay, I had the motor out, had the motor apart, and both springs were extremely dry. One, I opened the spring barrel and nothing but powder fell out. I've never seen grease dry that thoroughly before. That must be the original 1902 grease or whatever, because it was powder. But at least the springs were in good shape and strong. So I got them back in there, put them out, cleaned everything. I examined all the gears. Gears look to be in great shape. I see no sign of wear, damage, or anything else to explain why. It is as noisy as it is, so I have to assume that must be what they were like back then. I just, as yet, I don't have it greased yet. I have to take the motor out yet again to replace those missing felt washers that I don't have with me today. But I didn't want to get grease all over the place. I just oiled them a little bit and left them alone. But when I grease them, it'll probably quiet that a little bit. But it is, for someone used to Victrolas and Victor machines, this is pretty noisy. But it's still a beautiful machine, either way. Now, beautiful woodwork on this one. Like I said, there was no damage to anything on the motor. I did see signs that this has been worked on before. Somebody had adjusted the screw on the friction leather holder arm, I guess you'd call it, whatever they call it on this. Looked like a kind of a homemade screw and washer assembly in there to keep it in place. That's kind of repairs you see when something is this old, or 120 years old is to be expected. The missing washers kind of clued me in that someone had the motor out at least once before. Why they didn't service the springs, I don't know. But then again, they could have been serviced 80 years ago, and how would I know? Because it could be just as dry and nasty. There's just no way of knowing. But it is working. We are functional. When the epoxy gets here, I will replace the missing piece on the crane there and the arm. And find a piece of rubber to fit that reproducer to the horn. And it will be capable of playing. It is holding 78 RPM. So that's not a problem. It's holding speed. It'll play. I know the reproducer is good. And no real surprises. You know, it came apart easily. There wasn't a whole giant buildup of goop on it, as you saw when I showed it in the last video. Just one or two signs that someone had been in there before. But really a complex motor. You know, being used to Victors and their motors, there's a lot of stuff going on in these Columbia motors. A lot of gears spinning here and there and everywhere. And let me tell you something. I thought the Swiss machines were bad when it came to the number of times you had to spin that crank to wind them up, especially, you know, the double spring Swiss motors in the Pollards and all of those. But this one, I stopped counting at 112 rotations. 112 from dead nothing to probably pretty close to fully wound. I didn't want to force it beyond that. Didn't really feel like it was under tension yet, but I figured 112 is a good starting point. That kind of was, I was sort of expecting that, having seen the gears and all that, but wow, that's a lot of arm workout. If you played that, also explains maybe why there's not a whole lot of wear on these gears, because somebody didn't want to be winding that thing up over and over. Oh boy. You know, this is why electric motors were invented, I guess. But it really took some spinning to get that thing going. I found out that the lid stay knob was actually not installed backwards, but the spring was on the outside instead of the inside where it had to be. You're supposed to be able to pull it out and lift, not push in, and it does nothing. That disengages when you push in. But so somebody had that backwards. So again, a sign that somebody been inside this. Like I knew from the missing, you know, the changed felt, if you can, it's not felt, but let's call it the turntable cover, because it's not felt. I haven't changed that yet either, but there's time for that later on. What else? Well, like I said, the springs were good. That one, I probably should have been videoing that, but didn't expect to see it when I got that the barrels open and all that dust fell out. It was powdered. It wasn't even black graphite. I can't even call it that. It was more of a brownish color. It was some kind of ancient grease in there that turned to powder. The spring wasn't even dirty. It was just everything on it that had been lubricating it was completely fossilized. It just powdered, disintegrated to nothing. And that's why the springs have been clanging and banging and thumping around in there. Now, of course, it's not doing that for obvious reasons. And that was just the one spring. The other one, it really wasn't quite as bad. It was not liquid by any means, not even close. But I did have to, you know, kind of scrape that out a little bit, but not much. And again, the spring itself was actually very clean. And when I put it in the solvent, nothing really came off it. Not bad for, you know, given that this is at the age that it is. Well, let's listen to it. You can hear it sing. Without a record on it, you can hear this one sing. Let's see. You got to reach behind the machine, pull out the stop. And that thumping and booming in the background was somebody's boombox in a car, not this. Yeah, we don't have a subwoofer mounted with this now. Doesn't need one. Well, there it is. It's at least functional again. Well, it was functional to start with. Now it's spinning a little bit less noise and thumping and bumping. And we will have it apart again, not the motor, but having the motor out. It's only four. Literally, the motor just pops out with 4 nuts. 4 7/16 nuts, and the whole entire thing drops right out in seconds. It's nothing to take it on and off, which is why I put it back in there just to play with it a little bit, and to later on take it out again and replace those missing. I'm assuming that there were felt washers in there. The spacing does not seem right, so there had to have been felt washers similar to what's found in a Victrola, which is good because that's the style I have. I just got to find what I did with them. They're around somewhere. I'll dig them out and install 4 of them in here. And that should correct the spacing a little bit. Right now, the stop is rubbing a bit when it goes in the hole in the back. And you can see the crank is not quite where it should be in that hole. It should be a little bit lower. But that's all right. That kind of stuff is easy to deal with. That's nothing. That's all really the hard work done on this now. I just have to assemble a horn and a little gluing and epoxying or whatever. And that's it. This will be playing, one hopes. And I think I'm going to go ahead and put 4 little rubber feet on the bottom of that cabinet. You know, these things, they're convenient to have on there. They may have had them to start with. Imagine it did, because it's capable of marring up anything you put it on if you don't do that. There's no other you know, cushion under there, I guess you'd call it. And they're easy enough to install, so I'll take care of that. All right, there you go. That's the update so far on the Columbia AH early model. Dawn of the century. The 20th century, anyway.